Well, hi everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Bob and Chad Speed Tips by Bob and Chad, episode number 75. Uh, can't wait till we get 100. We'll have to have a party or something, some sort of an online party. That'll be exciting. So, yeah, looking forward to tonight. What's new and exciting at Weir's Machine?
Another couple weeks of excitement. Got to go out last weekend out to Pennsylvania and see Joel and do the open house there. So that was a good time. Had a little snowstorm run through, but pretty good group of guys came through there. So that was fun and kicked off a new week today and really busy. Build season, March Madness has nothing to do with basketball. Has everything to do with the month before race season, and so it's been pretty busy here.
Yeah, we got in probably 8 boxes of shocks that each box had to have had at least probably 6 or 8 in them, the way the boxes felt and the way the boxes looked. And Bobby was scratching his head thinking, oh my God, we were behind before, but now we're really behind. So, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, we haven't. Today was busy. Wasn't as busy of a phone day as a normal Monday. I mean, it was still pretty busy, but Austin had the day off on Friday, and so I got to do UPS and everything. And of course, believe it or not, we had a lot of packages to ship out. And I'm thinking, all those shortcuts that you used to learn when you do it on a day-to-day basis, and then you're kind of reading the invoice and now what do I do here and what do I do here? I'm like, I used to do this. I know I can handle this deal. So as far as I know, everybody got their packages that they were supposed to, or at least we'll know for sure tomorrow whether they did or they didn't. I think they did. Scott, hi guys. Helping a guy on an IMCA Northern Sport Mod. What do you suggest for Panhard bar angle? Do you lower it or raise it based on track conditions? 10 degrees of angle, in my opinion, is plenty. I'm not a real big fan of a lot of Panhard bar angle, and here's the reason why. With that rear end, when the rear end, with that being behind the axle housing, when the rear end steers, it really rotates that axle housing a lot. And the more angle we put on it, the quicker it moves right to left, or it shifts from one side to the other. And of course, then that actually changes handling quite a bit too. So I stay away from a lot of angle. I'll drop it as the racetrack dries out. Like my magic number is from the center of the axle housing down to where we locate it on the rear end is 3.5 inches. And when the racetrack gets super dry and slows down, we'll actually probably lower it to 4 inches. But I never go more than that 4 inches below the center of the rear end, because it makes the car too fidgety and it makes it inconsistent to drive, and actually makes it, it's like I said, fidgety. It's just not as consistent to drive for the driver. Okay. Rick, last class you discussed toe in on the rear bars on the left trailing arm and 1 inch on the right trailing arm. I'm lost as to what you meant about that. Well, if you're looking at the car from behind the car, as it goes forward, you'll notice if you put a straight edge on the axle mount, on the axle tube itself, or on the axle bracket itself, the rear bracket, we go ahead and then I actually toe the left rear end 2 inches to the front of the car, and the right rear I toe it ahead in 2 inches or 1 inch from and so when the car steers, the 1 inch actually, as the car rolls over and steers, the 1 inch actually goes straight up as the rear end moves. and then the left rear gains some angle. But in my opinion, that's basically putting kind of like one of our traction devices, aiming it towards the right front and trying to get more traction to the left rear in that form. Frank, got my BHE pull bar and BHE brackets welded on my rear end. Very impressed with the craftsmanship. What angle should I start with that pull bar on the sport mod, and how far above the rear end? I would say about 10 and a half, yeah, probably about 11 inches above the rear end, and 15 degrees of angle. 12 to 15 is pretty good. I'm not a big believer in a lot of angle because, of course, once again, it's kind of like I just explained on that Panhard bar. Anytime you have a lot of angle on something, it moves quickly, and more angle is going to give you more traction up off the corner, but it's going to make you looser getting into the corner. So sometimes, and any of you that have listened to any of my trivia before, I'm all about that that phase one of the corner and phase two of the corner. So I'm not as concerned about getting off the corner, because if I can pick up speed getting in and through the middle, I'm going to beat you off whether I have traction or whether I don't, because it's just, you're just going so much faster. It just makes that process so much better. Chris, I've heard moving the pull bar forward on the rear end will help drive off when the track starts trending dry slick. Is that true, or should I shorten the pull bar when I do this? Would it be best to have multiple rolls of holes on the chassis mount? Well, it probably would be best to have multiple holes on the chassis mount, but to be honest with you, I think what you would gain by moving that ahead, you could probably do other things to the race car and make the car faster rather than moving that. I don't personally see where it gains us any traction. That moving it ahead theory was when we were getting a lot of movement. Our pull bars were getting 3.5 inches of movement, and nowadays a good pull bar gets 1.25 inches, and inch and a half at the max. So we've actually found that it works better being from the center on behind, because it pulls some of the angle out of it and makes the theory used to be pull an angle into the pull bar would make the car tighter, but I've actually found that with what movement we get in that rear end, it's almost better to be center or slightly behind center. What's your opinion, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, spot on. Years ago when the pull bars were moving more, you had to be in front of center line so it didn't fall over zero. But when we're trending now, not moving as much, or if it's a sport mod with no biscuits or anything at all, then moving it back is going to give you more traction. The front side's tough because most chassis aren't built with adjustment on the front side. You're married to whatever that tube is or whatever they're clamping to up there. We've made a few brackets that clamp on like 1.5 inch round, like our 290s, that move it back, and then we made a longer one also to move that point back on the front. But it's tough. Moving it around is difficult on a car that isn't built for moving it around, but definitely behind center line would be more traction in my opinion.
Mark says you look crabby, Chad.
I'm sorry, Mark. This is just me. I'm kind of blah.
That's why this Bob and Chad thing works pretty good, because neither one of us are like a real bucket of excitement. I used to tell my kids when they'd say if they did something right and I didn't jump up and down, they were like, well, and I'm like, man, I don't do cartwheels. I mean, I'm not athletic.
The marketing team's working on new commercials and they want voiceovers, and I'm like, I'm not your guy. I'll do the tech videos and the whatever, but I can't get that excited announcer voice. We'll hire that out. So.
Well, I know, just like the schools, every day, every Saturday afternoon after they've been in there for a full day and a half, my voice is kind of starting to dwindle down a little bit, level out a little bit more, and they're kind of starting to drift off a little bit. But nothing like the one day when we blew up a shock. We woke everybody up that day, didn't we?
That scared the living you know what out of me. That I'm glad that wasn't any worse than it was. That was scary.
Yeah, it was a scary deal. What was a good starting point for 4-link angles on the modified? Currently, this car is a standard index car. Well, I still, my left upper is usually in that 28 degrees. And these are going to be static numbers. But statically, I think that, 28 degrees on the left upper, about 5 to 7 degrees on the left lower. The right rear lower is probably 4 degrees, 3 degrees, somewhere in there. And the right upper is usually around 18. But the big thing is when you jack the car up in dynamic and you take the right front spring out or put your load stick on and crank down on that right front and jack up underneath the seat till it hits the chain, you're going to want to have that be about 48 degrees of bar angle. That left upper bar is going to need to be in that 48 degree range. That's kind of your magic number, in my opinion, for most cars. Zero indexing, we go to 50, but without zero indexing, I wouldn't go past 48 because you're getting on the edge of disaster. Yeah, Chris, I agree with you. Toby or Chet, either one of those guys would be excellent for commercials. Those guys, I had Toby. Toby's actually done a couple things for me years ago, and man, he's good. He's really good. And some of those announcers would be kind of good, but some of them get a little too carried away, and I don't know. I mean, we gotta still kind of remember a little bit where we're a little flat and not have somebody overzealous here. Otherwise, people will think we lost it or something.
Dustin Jarrett's been my go-to. He's kind of right there in the middle of the road.
Well, it's good to have a guy kind of like that, no doubt. Austin, my Austin at work is pretty good. He's got a good, strong voice, and he doesn't do anything too wild. Hi, Fred. I bet you don't have this snow out there that we got this weekend. We had this freaking wet, crappy snow that dropped on us there over the weekend, and you can't even shovel it. I mean, my snowblower, I went 2 foot, locked it up, and I'm like, well, this isn't going to work. So then I tried to do 2 more feet with the shovel, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to have to drive over this stuff. It's just going to have to be okay. That's why you have a 4-wheel drive in Iowa.
Very depressing. I'm ready for spring. On the bright side, when I came here tonight, it was still light, so that daylight savings is working. So
yeah, definitely.
Won't be long. We'll be complaining about how hot it is.
Yeah. Well, 147 days we'll be at the Harris Clash. So
Sweet.
Won't be long. I mean, it's clicking her down there. Won't be long. We'll be there August 8th. Registration's open. And those guys that want to pre-register, you're more than welcome to pre-register. Kind of guarantees your number. That's all available at harrisclash.com information. We've got we're trying to get our Facebook deal up and running a little bit stronger, or not Facebook, our YouTube channels. So make sure you go on YouTube and like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All these episodes, and this is 75th anniversary. So we'll have 75 episodes that you can go back and watch starting tomorrow. Because as soon as he gets there, as soon as Colton comes in the morning, he loads on the YouTube channel. We haven't quite got figured out how to do the YouTube live thing yet, but we're going to get that figured out. And so make sure you go on there, like, share, and subscribe. We've got a new RTI Knowledge Center video that we just put on the Knowledge Center today, doing pulled or the load stick on a stock car. And I think that's my tidbits. All the once again, in all the episodes, all 75 of the episodes, or 74 of them at this point, are on the racetechinfo.youtube channel, or I guess it's youtube.com, racetechinfo1. Anyway, hey guys, have a 602 crate late model that is pulling the left front in the air on exit. Any tips on getting it back down? What's your thoughts, Chad?
And my go-to is usually either the right top rod or the left bottom rod. So if you have your right top rod is too flat, it'll kind of want to wheelie. And then if your left bottom rod has too much angle, that's going to act like a jack stand to jack the car up. So it might be just a simple balancing act between them two to get that left front to sit back down.
And another thing, you could try a wheel spacer on the right rear, because a lot of times what happens is that right rear gets hooked and has so much side bite that's actually what's causing the left front too. Can kind of lift up a little bit. I know a lot of times on modifieds, it's pretty simple that the rear end is either too far to the left or something to that effect, and so changing wheel offsets or putting a spacer on that wheel is another option. Mark, what do you guys think of the new Swift front springs they came out with? I missed one. Sorry. I'll get back to you, Steve. From what I've read about them and what I've been told about them, they're really not that much different than the Eibach Platinum spring that they've had out for a couple of years. Because what it is it's a spring with less coils on it. And, anytime you have less coils, that spring's probably not going to last as long. And I know that their advertisements are going to be that they're going to last long, but the amount of abuse that a right front spring takes in today's world, I don't believe that there's a spring manufacturer that can guarantee the rebound of a spring to stay for a lifetime of that spring. The rate might stay there, the compression part of it might stay there, but that's the thing that people don't understand. That when a spring goes bad, it goes bad on the rebound side of it. So unless you have a dyno like our Ultra Force machine that can actually dyno that spring, you really can't see in a spring checker. You really can't see that rebound side of it. So it might rate perfectly fine, but it's the rebound side that goes bad. Steve, on an IMCA Sport Mod, is there an advantage to running a 19-inch bar on the left and a 16 on the right versus heads up length? In my opinion, sometimes we actually run a 17-inch bar with a 16-inch bar on the left. I like the longer bar to a point where I think you can run a little bit more angle and not get that instant mid-corner push sometimes that you can get with a 16-inch bar. So the 19 might, you'd have to try it. It might be a little lazy in the middle of the corner. I'd be a little nervous about that. That's quite a bit of spread. I think I would probably try an 18 if I was going to try something different and I had the room to do it. I'd probably, a 2-inch split, I think, is probably reasonable. Watching speed tips and doing the top of our track tool cart setup for, oh yeah, that's a Chad one. Go ahead.
Space, yeah, thank you. That's awesome. So Trace My Space is another one of our sister brand companies, tracemyspace.com. And it's all about organizing your toolbox in your life. So Basically, you take a picture of your tools organized in your box, upload them to the website there, and we cut the foam insert for the drawer to organize your tools. So when your trailer's bouncing down the highway, you don't get there and they're all on one end of the drawer, or left side of the drawer, right side of the drawer, front, back. So keeps things organized, and it also can eliminate theft. So that's the biggest thing that we use them for. We sell a lot of them to big companies that, in your production line, when you have a screwdriver in there that you need to perform a task and the guy on first shift steals it, the guy on second shift comes and there's no screwdrivers. So it definitely keeps your life organized and eliminates those walking tools.
Yeah, those are neat deals, no doubt about that. Definitely a nice way to keep things organized. And of course, I'm one of those guys that likes a little bit of organization. And nothing worse than going to the racetrack and have to fumble through a drawer to find a wrench, and it's just wasted time. Let's see here. Bought a chassis. What's the best way to check the lower A-frame if they're bent? Just going through things. Thanks, guys. Well, the lower A-frame on a Chevelle stub car, I can't tell you on a metric car because I don't actually know that measurement off the top of my head. That's something I could research, though, and find out. But on a Chevelle stub car, we lay the A-frame flat on the ground as if it's on the car, but flat on the ground, and then tip it up and then measure up to the ball joint thing so that it's 5 1/4 inches off the floor or off the level surface, the bench or whatever you're measuring off of. Now, if you already have new A-frames, Chad's got a tool, and I'll let Chad explain it, that works really well that you can actually use at the racetrack to check it. But you would need to make sure that your A-frames were square to begin with when you did this.
Yeah, we made a tool so you can reference it on the car. So basically, it's a tool that has 2 arms that go up. One touches the control arm, and one takes a measurement similar to what Bob was talking about there. But like he said, you can't really judge a used car because you don't know if that lower was compromised or not. So that would be something you'd have to build a notebook with a brand new set, use the tool, document the measurement, and then when you go out and race, if you have an unfortunate incident there, you can put that tool on really quick on the car and check that control arm instantly and know if you need to work on it, if it's bent, compared to your number you took when it was new. So just a cool tool that we developed for, when you're on a Saturday night program and you're trying to win championships as fast as you can repair that car, that can be the difference between being a champion and not. So that tool and our little spindle checker tool that slips on there and tells you if your ball joints are bent or your spindle's compromised, things that let you know fast if you need to get that suspension off there and fixed before the B main or before the feature or whatever. So just another cool tool that lets you check them control arms, and it'll work on Chevelles and metrics, fabricated lowers. We got late model guys using them. So it basically just is a simple tool that goes over the hex head of the bolt and bumps the control arm and lets you measure. So pretty sweet deal. I'd grab one, but I don't see one here in the showroom.
Terry, hobby stock type car. When scaling it, how important is crossweight, and is there a number that you need to shoot for? Well, I think the crossweight's definitely very important. As far as poundage wise, I know when we scale them, we usually use that 150 pounds of split between the left rear and the right rear. That seems to work pretty well. I know some guys run as much as 200 pounds of split, because with that stock tire, you've got pretty decent side bite, and forward traction's a little bit of a problem with them things anyway. So I would say you're really safe in that 150 pound range. That's where I would start, and then just give the chassis what it's going to tell you what it needs. I mean, if it needs a little bit more, put a little bit more in it. And I'd put more in it, and then if it gets loose getting in, I'd back it back off. What's the best way to set the chain limiter on the left and the right rear as far as length on an IMCA A-mod? As far as length on the chain, that's a great question. I couldn't actually tell you what our length of our chains are.
I think you got to go to the chassis builder, right?
Yeah, you almost got to go to the chassis builder to see what his overall length is. Now, once again, I kind of judge my end result by how we check it in dynamic mode when we're jacking up the left rear up against the chain. That's kind of how I set my left rear upper bar angle, is by the chain, and then I adjust the chain accordingly. The right rear, I basically set that so that it doesn't come off the spring. So in other words, if I jack up on the back of the car, there's still like a round of preload in that right rear spring. Some guys go more than that, but that right rear one's a little bit tricky. The race conditions aren't premium. You definitely don't want to do that. Let's see here. Ryan, Bob had a video on the difference between the cheap lower A-frames. In fact, I think that's actually just a YouTube or a regular Facebook video. Thanks, Ryan, for reminding me. We definitely, I could not believe the difference between like the A-frames that we sell are the premium ones. And then, of course, we make sure and press the spring pocket so that there's plenty of clearance for the spring to get in there. And they're a little bit more expensive, but they're right, and you know what you have when you get it. But as far as that's kind of where, but as far as the overall length, you'd actually have to check with your chassis builder, because it all depends on where his upper bars are and how that's mounted. I mean, it just all depends on the chassis itself. Do I need all my wrench space perfectly to trace the
trace my space? Yeah. So when they do the tracing of the photo, they will try to align it a little bit, but try to have it as good as you can. And we need about a 1/4 inch of space between each wrench, so you got enough foam in there to basically hold it in place. So make sure you got at least a 1/4 inch between your tools, and then they'll kind of straighten everything up a little bit when they do the trace.
Let's see. Sean, on a right front IMCA Sport mod at 1 inch in a .002, 2 inches is .026, and 3 inches of compression, I have .068 degrees of toe out with 6 degrees camber. Is that good? And everything I try to say that I see tries to get us. Tries to get as close to zero as possible. Am I in the ballpark? Yeah, Sean, you're right in there, man. That's pretty good. I let my cars go at .075 in the 3 inch mark. That's pretty good. With the stock components that we have to run, if we could do a little bit more with that center link, we could get it a little bit more fine-tuned. But with just trying to adjust the outer tie rod, we can't get it. We just can't get it perfect. And I'm not sure in today's world on a dirt race car with that right front, the way it goes into travel anyway, I'm not sure that makes that much difference anymore. It used to be, I was a big believer in that zero, but I don't know if the car would know the difference between .075 and zero, to be honest with you, because we're not loading that left the left front as much. So our right front's basically towing out. And what you can do there is just adjust, maybe instead of running 5/8 of an inch of toe out on the overall car, run a 1/2 inch of toe out. And so you're still going to get the end result that you're wanting to. And I just don't think, because we're on that right front all the time. It used to be when we were coming off the right front, that toe out was a lot more important, but we're buried on that right front all the time, whether it's a sport mod or a modified or a late model or a stock car. These cars are all buried on that right front. Okay, Sean. Oh, yeah. Talking Bumpster. Yeah, I was pretty sure you were talking Bumpster when you were talking about those, Sean. That's no problem. Russ has got a Facebook Watch something. I'm not sure what that is. Ever spaced out the steering arm with washers on the 3-piece spindles to try and get the bump steer to come out better. I have not actually spent the time on that, to be honest with you. I know we're going to be doing a stock car here pretty soon that has those 3-piece spindles on it, and I think we're going to have to do some real creative stuff to get the bump steer to come out right with the stock, because with the stock car, we've actually got to run standard tie rods. We can't run. They can't run a hind joint on the outside. So that's going to be we're going to have to do some things there. But the biggest thing is we just need to tip it up or down, not necessarily in or out as much. But that would fine tune it. There's no doubt about that. What's the correct way to measure for a new drive shaft on a GRT bought as a roller and didn't come with a drive shaft? I'm going to be running a Burt transmission. How much of the yoke do I want sticking out? How much of the yoke do I want sticking out of the transmission and to get the correct measurement? Well, you're going to want that 8-inch yoke so that you get plenty of movement there, and then you're going to want to have it so that it's got about 4 inches out and 4 inches in. Seemed to me with that standard yoke that our drive shaft number was a 28.5-inch drive shaft for a GRT car, but I would probably call the shop tomorrow and ask Brandon for sure. But I'm pretty sure that's a number that sticks in my mind is a 28.5-inch, but I don't know what yoke that was with. Russ, sorry, that's a link to the video on your page showing you how to measure that. Oh, awesome. How to measure that bent lower. Chad, could you make some precision spacers for adjusting that steering arm?
Actually,
Chad can make anything.
Well, not really thin washers like that. You would, if you go to McMastercar.com, and I think they call them machinery bushings, but they make little thin washers for dialing that stuff in that are all sorts of sizes from like 1/1000 all the way up to 1/8 inch thick, I think. So McMastercar, that's where we get all the shimming washers for dialing in the clevises on the Ultraforce machines.
Gotcha. James, on an A-mod, I see a few cars, they run a coilover on the left rear behind the birdcage. What's the advantage or disadvantage versus the slider behind with a shock in front? With it being on a coilover, it's definitely more straight line traction. The downside to it is once you get to the end of the straightaway and you back off, it's a little spooky because with the shock in front, you have some control on as the shock compresses and the left rear comes down, you have some control of helping keep that left rear up in the air. And then when it does come down, you've got a shock to help control that. Or when you put that behind the housing, now all of a sudden you lose that control. So the car can get a little spooky getting in. I've seen guys try it numerous times. I've seen guys go with it and go away from it. It's kind of a driver preference. If a driver's extremely good with the brakes and is an excellent trail breaker, I think that system works pretty good. With it being behind the housing, it definitely gives you more traction. So in certain situations, I could see where it would be an advantage, but the overall attitude of the car kind of tends to be a disadvantage because it really screws up phase one of the corner. Justin, are you guys running a 4-off on the left rear in your stock cars with a 62-inch rear end? Actually, we're running a 3-inch offset there. The 4-inch would be the same thing as running a 2-inch on a 60-inch rear end. So, the advantage to that 62-inch rear end is sticking it out there a little bit further on the left rear, trying to get a little bit more traction up off the corner. Now you've got to run a little bit more left rear bite with that setup because it does free the car up a little bit getting in, but traction, once you're back on the throttle, the traction with that left rear being outside that left front tracking definitely seems to give the car more traction.
Hey, I brought my new tool with.
Awesome.
Dipstick.
Dipstick.
Checking the oil on your engine.
Really? Awesome.
You bet. 604 crate. 7 quarts marked on a 604 crate. Otherwise a blank one so you can mark it for whatever you run for an engine. For an open.
Well, that's pretty cool. Same material as those rivet spacers.
Yeah, Steve Bachman has been real creative on the lasers lately.
Awesome.
Your old buddy Stevie.
Yeah. So is he racing again this year? Got a new car or anything? Or
yeah, he just got a new 604 from Carl's, so he's all excited.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Ryan says, I've seen a couple cars in the past year or two with swing arm right rears and 4-link left rears. Advantages or disadvantages to something like this? Well, once again, that swing arm deal on that right rear definitely will give you a ton of traction. But man, you want to talk about something that's going to wheelie. Oh my Lord. Because there's nothing in the back of that car that's holding that car up so that, because with that swing arm, there's no upper rod trying to hold that right rear corner up. So in my opinion, if I had a racetrack where I was drag racing, which was really a tight corner deal where I needed to be free getting in and drag race off, that might be the setup. But consistency wise, you're not going to be happy with it. I mean, it has its pluses because it's got tons and tons of traction. But sometimes that's not always. Joey says, awesome new product. And Joey, I appreciate that. I'll tell Bobby that tomorrow that you thank him for all his help. Tim Gold Sr., Chad, did you make that blank dipstick for me?
Blank.
Awesome. Well, once again, those of you guys that are Knowledge Center guys, make sure you go on and watch that new video on. We did the load stick. I mean, it's very similar to the same video that we've got on there for doing a modified, but it's actually using a stock car and doing the same principle, only on an IMCA stock car instead. My A modified has a floating X. Should I leave it or consider getting it welded up? That's hard for me to actually answer that question because, of course, I don't really know how the rest of the car is constructed and where the rest of the bars go. Um, I know we've always built a relatively lightweight X, and I know, GRT years ago had played with some floating X things. Um, I don't know. In today's world, I'd probably weld it up, just because of the fact that I don't like unknowns where that floating X, it just depends on, how the car enters the corner, how the car hits a hole. It could give you a memory situation that might not be the advantage. I don't know. I'm not a real fan of that type of stuff. I would rather put a really thin wall X in there that can flex, but I don't like the floating part of it. That's just my, yeah. And it's a sports car. I mean, those guys definitely know, they know what's going in. So I mean, if they built the car, like I said, it just depends on how they built the car. I mean, if they built the car fairly rigid in other places, that floating X might be a good idea. I mean, I'd recommend what they say and what they do is what I'd recommend. Bob, is far left of the rear out versus tucking the left rear in. Tucking the left rear in will help the car turn in the middle of the corner. Sticking it out will help the car tighten up in the middle of the corner and off the corner, because it kind of goes by, you look behind the car and you map out, or you string line the car, and you see where your left rear toes in line with the left front, the same with your right rear and your right front. The objective is to make sure that the right rear is inside the right front an inch and a half in there somewhere. And I always try to have my right or my left side tires in line. So then you can actually go and adjust it and stick it out a little further, because sticking it out further will give you more traction off the corner. And how it does that is because the way it's telling the car that it's supposed to turn to the right when I've got my left rear outside my left front, it tells the car that my driving pattern, my driving tires are saying to go to the left. Go to the right. Where if we stick it inside the left front, that tells the car that it's supposed to go to the left. Luke, IMCA Sport Mod, would you line up the left side rotors or the right side rotors? I'd line up the left sides. Because the Sport Mods definitely need to be, oh yeah, sorry, Jeffrey, left in versus out. Still, I think I answered the question. Well, we've got a few minutes for a few more questions. Anybody have any other questions or comments or anything? Like I said, we trying to promote the Race Tech Info YouTube. That's kind of a direction we're going to go, and eventually we're going to be going live on YouTube. I don't know when that's going to be, or if we're going to be able to do them both at the same time. I'm not really sure, but the YouTube channel seems to be a little better storage, easier to kind of get people. For those of you who want to watch some of the past episodes or whatever, it's a lot easier to find those episodes on there. Steve wants to know when I sold Harris chassis and why. I got to be political on the why. It was the year 2000 is when I actually sold the chassis. It was a situation where we had some things that were going good, and the gentleman wanted to own the place, and we were going to go to work for him, and so there was a lot of good potential to get the car or the company to grow beyond what I could make it. Some of those things didn't come true, and so it didn't work out quite the way that I wanted it to. If I had it to do over again, I probably wouldn't have sold the company. It's just one of those situations where at the time it was the thing to do, or at least I thought it was the thing to do. And, you know, I had done it for 20 years. So it was a situation where, like, the biggest thing is we thought that it was going to be an advantage to grow the company. And it didn't quite work out like I thought it was going to. Chad, you want to talk about the new app?
Yeah, Circle Track app. So it's been out for a couple months now. So it's available in both of the Play stores, the Apple and the Android. You do need to go to the website, circletrackapp.com, to purchase it, and then go back to the app to put your key in that you get after you purchase it. So far, everybody that's been using it has been pretty happy with it. There's a lot of information in there. So whether you use all of it or some of it, you know, you got all of your alignment issues and maintenance and measurements and parts list and everything. So, and there's a trackside tuning section. So you pick your car and your condition. So if you put modified in there and you put loose in, it gives you some suggestions on what to do. So far it's been, that's tough to see. So far it's been a lot of fun and getting good feedback and some constructive criticism for how much stuff is in there. But it is a lot of data, and you know, it's about how you use it.
Yeah, I had a customer that he had researched it and looked at it, and I told him he needed to have that. So it was just going to be a good thing for him. His concern was he thought it was too much information. And I said, no, that's not the case. It's not too much information. You don't need to use every bit of information that's in there. And I said, just put your information in the car or of your car in there and use the stuff that pertains to you. And then after that, I don't know if he ended up buying it or not. It was one of the stock car guys that was at the school. And so I don't know if he ended up buying it or not, but anyway. Sean, when you were lining up the left side tires, should you go off the bottom of the tire on the ground or off the center of the wheel? I actually go off the bottom. The way I do it is I go right below the door so that I can go a straight line. So it's probably, I'm going to say 8 inches off the ground. Not quite center, but basically I just line it up where it works so that I don't have, so my clearances work out for me. Let's see here. Running a right front chain limiter on a street stock, how does that affect forward drive? The right front chain limiter, I don't know if I would actually say that would affect forward drive. What it does affect is it keeps the car over on the right front so that it keeps it locked on the right front. How it would increase drive, of course, it's putting more angle in your left lower control arm, which is going to give you traction. But it's more about keeping the right front more loaded to the racetrack and sticking the right front harder rather than actually giving you drive. So what it does is it might seem like it gives you drive because the car turns in better and rolls through the middle of the corner maybe a little better. So your actual corner speed's probably better, and it'll make you believe that you've got more traction. But in theory, technically, I don't think it's going to give you more forward traction. It might seem like it does, but I don't think, you know, and the only way it would give you more traction is, like I said, putting more angle in that trailing arm. When a scuffle breaks out in the pits, do you all recommend shovels, hammers, or some other type of garden tool?
I'm going with Matt Ruff on that one. Weir's mud scraper.
Yeah. Usually those deals, I do my best to stay at a distance and watch what happens.
It was a rough weekend for fights, but they had a big ASA asphalt race and they were fighting after that. And Then that one down on the dirt track, they were fighting after that. Jesus.
Boy, they're just getting too serious about this stuff, man. I mean, it hasn't been that long of a winter.
Right.
Holy moly. Usually that stuff comes after July, after the heat of the summer.
Right.
Steve wants to know what the name of the app is again.
Circle Track app. So circletrackapp.com is where you need to go to check it out.
Jim says, only 3 feet of snow to melt, and we're going racing in central Minnesota. Yeah, you guys really got it bad. There's no doubt about that. My good old buddy Dave Kane, who has a real sense of humor, he calls me the other day and wanted to know if I was planning on coming up to see. And my first response, I wasn't thinking about the snow, but I was like, well, I hadn't really. Oh, yeah, funny, ha, ha, ha. Because, of course, the last time that I've been involved in one of those big snowstorms, I ended up going in the ditch and spending a couple days with my good buddy Kevin Stoa. And thank God for Kevin. That would have been a heck of a mess if I'd have got to spend the night in my truck in the freaking ditch in southern Minnesota. Oh, well. Needless to say, I'm a little bit more cautious of a driver. I was telling Chad the other day that I was going to go to Ankeny, and which is a town 40 miles south of here. I got to Ames, which is only about 10 miles south of where I live, and I couldn't hardly see the road. And I'm thinking, I just got this new truck. I think I'm going to turn around and go home and keep it all in one piece instead of trying to be some sort of a hero and fight the snow, because I used to do that, but after that ditch deal, yeah, not so much anymore. USRA BMOD. Shock on the right front is extremely close to hitting the spring cup in the spring. Can I move the bottom shock mount to get the shock away from the spring and not change the handling of the race car? Yeah, you're not going to change the handling of the race car with how much you're actually moving it. That's a pretty minute deal. So, Adam, I wouldn't worry about it. I would be more concerned about saving my $200 or $300 shock than I would how it's going to change the handling of the car. Ryan said it should have happened on a front straight. Well, that's the thing about that. If these guys are going to put on a show, they really need to put on a show. I mean, we need to entertain the fans. I mean, probably the promoters would have paid extra to have that on the front straightaway.
There's somebody that has that sign up at the track, ain't it? If you fight in your pit, it's $100 fine, and if
you're going to fight, make sure you do it on the front straightaway.
Yeah, $100 if you fight on the front straightaway or something.
Yep, no doubt. What you guys got a soft to fist fight? Yeah. They must have spent too much time indoors this winter, I guess. I don't know. The adrenaline and all that buildup must have just been too much. Oh, well. It's the way it goes. Well, we've got enough time for a couple more questions. And once again, don't forget, go on to YouTube and make sure you hit like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel for the Race Tech info. And then you're sure welcome to be able to watch all the previous episodes. Like I said, there's 74 on there now, and there'll be 75 by noon tomorrow.
When are we on next? 2 weeks?
Next is 2 weeks, and today would be the 13th, so it'd be the 27th. And my God, I hope we have better weather by the 27th. I'm taking my motorhome up to Winnebago on the 27th, and I've got a list of things that I want them to go through all this stuff so that when the season comes to use that thing, I don't have to go through a bunch of hoopla to try to figure out why this doesn't work and why that doesn't work. And in the past, I've done that, and I'm just over that. I'm just going to take it up there and have them get it all prepped for the season. Okay. Doesn't race cars cost enough without tearing each other up? You know, I mean, we've got a car sitting in there that's going to be picked up tomorrow. It's like 37,000 or something like that, and I just can't imagine. Taylor Cool picked up her. Oh, I gotta send you that picture, Chad. I gotta send you a picture of her new car. Man, that's awesome. Her new car. She picked up her new car today, and so that was good. We've got no room in the shop, and hopefully, if everything goes good by the end of the week, we'll have all kinds of room to get ready for the guys that are coming in next week. So right now, we had a couple sitting outside and over the day so that they had room to work in there. It's been pretty full. Troy does think that I need to expand. And I asked him I asked him today, I said, is that going to be on your checkbook or my checkbook? If it's my checkbook, we probably aren't changing it. So suck it up, buddy. Thanks, Bob and Chad. Got 3 boxes full of Weir's goodies to bolt on the car. Should get a few stickers for my 2 modifieds. Well, you should have got a bunch of stickers in the boxes.
Should have came in the box, hopefully. Otherwise,
Yeah.
if you want the big ones, you have to request the big ones. They send the little guys with. But thanks for the order, Adam. I appreciate all the customers. It's been a good kickoff to 2023, so hopefully we can keep it rolling.
Yep, no doubt. It started off 2023 started off good, and we were a little bit off of what we had last year, but we had such an extremely great January last year, which was kind of a deal. In business, you count a month, but in our deal, you got to almost look at it 3 months at a time, because if one car gets billed out in January, but it was all worked on in December, it credits January and doesn't credit December. So I kind of look at the 3 months, and the overall 3 months has been really good. So I'm really happy with that. All right. Well, another nice episode. We'll see everybody on the 27th, and see you then, Chad.
Yep. Thanks. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.